The sun was just beginning to fall behind the low hills that ringed the northern edge of Botswana's Okavango Delta, casting long, golden shadows across the floodplain. The heat of the day still clung to the grass and the backs of the acacia trees, but there was a change in the air, a restless stirring that only those who've spent long hours in the wild truly understand. It was the hour of predators. I was in the reserve that evening, a seasoned wildlife observer and guide, stationed at a discreet distance in a camouflaged truck, alone. I.D. followed the same herd of Cape buffalo for months. This particular herd was large, more than 200 strong, and moved like a single breathing entity across the landscape, each step measured and deliberate. Among them was a cow who had become something of a legend among the rangers. We didn't give her a name. Naming animals out here risks slipping into sentiment, but we all recognized her. She was larger than most females, her horns broader, and her eyes carried the weight of something we couldn't quite name. She had presence. That evening, the herd had come to a shallow waterhole to drink. Calves nudged close to their mothers, bulls flanked the outer ranks with practiced vigilance. The big female, the one we watched closely, stood further out than the rest, near the rear, scanning the surrounding brush. Her posture was taut, ears rotating like radar dishes. Something was wrong. At first, I didn't see them. Lions, when they want to be, can vanish into the tall grass, even a whole pride of them. The pride in this region was known for boldness. I'd seen them take down adult buffalo before, but always with difficulty, always with risk. And they knew it. This wasn't like a zebra or a wildebeest. A buffalo fights back. But tonight, the lions had come with intent, and they had picked their spot perfectly. An outcropping of shrubs and a termite mound gave them cover in elevation. From my vantage point, I saw the gleam of a tawny shoulder, a flick of a tail. At least 6 lions, and they weren't just hunting. They were orchestrating an ambush. The herd didn't know. Not yet. A few bulls at the perimeter stomped, sensing something, but the water was too tempting in the dry season. Calves stumbled to the edge, dipping their mouths to drink. One, a small calf no more than a few weeks old, had wandered slightly away from the group, into a lower patch of grass, only a few dozen yards from the cover where the lions waited. That was when it happened. It was sudden, but not silent. The lead lioness burst from the brush with terrifying speed, followed by 2 more. The calf froze for a split second, just long enough. The first lioness closed the gap in a heartbeat and lunged. But before her claws could meet flesh, the air exploded with the thunder of hooves. The big female buffalo, the one we watched, had already been in motion. Somehow, she had read the wind, the posture of the bulls, the sudden tension of the moment. She didn't hesitate. She didn't look back. She ran, directly at the lions. She hit the lead lioness broadside like a freight train, her horns goring the air beside the predator's ribs. The lioness tumbled, rolled, and scrambled away, coughing dust. The other 2 lions circled, trying to flank her, but the buffalo cow swung around, placing herself between them and the calf, who had crumpled to the ground in panic. And then, the roar. Not a lion's roar, but something deeper, older, wilder. The sound a buffalo makes when it decides it will not run. The lions hesitated, confused. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. Their plan had been precision, not chaos. The cow kept advancing, her eyes locked onto them. A 4th lion tried to come in from the side. He'd looped around the edge of the chaos. But the buffalo spun, quick as a whip, and charged again. This time, she connected. I saw the lion lifted, thrown. He landed hard, his side heaving. The calf, still trembling, struggled to its feet. Behind them, the herd had begun to react. Buffalo aren't always quick to respond, but when they do, they come as one. The rumble started low, a distant, growing drumbeat of hooves, and then it broke into a full stampede as the rest of the herd realized what was happening. Dozens of buffalo surged toward the confrontation, heads lowered, bellowing. The lions scattered. All but one. The lioness who had started the attack had lingered too long, unwilling to surrender the kill she'd nearly secured. She darted toward the calf again, mouth open. That was when the cow struck her. Clean, brutal, fast. One horn caught her just beneath the shoulder, and the force of the charge knocked her sprawling. She yelped, a high, startled cry, and dragged herself back into the grass, limping. The calf ran. I watched as the cow pivoted again, her flanks heaving, blood trickling from a shallow cut on her side, likely from a claw that had found its mark. She ignored it. Her gaze followed the lions as they vanished into the night. She didn't pursue. She didn't need to. Behind her, the herd had encircled the calf, guiding it back into their protective mass. One of the older bulls trotted up beside the cow and stood close. She didn't move. For a long moment, the only sound was the panting of the buffalo, the distant retreating growls of lions, and the slow return of night insects. That was how the story began. I've been in the bush for over 20 years. I've seen chases, kills, last stands. But I have never seen what I saw that night, an individual buffalo not just reacting in panic or fear, but making a choice. A calculated, deliberate defense. She didn't just save the calf. She held off 6 lions and protected the lives of several other buffalo caught in the ambush. And that was just the beginning. Morning came slowly to the delta, mist lifting in lazy ribbons over the water and grasslands, revealing a landscape that had shifted overnight. The events of the previous evening had left more than just trampled earth and scattered lion scent. Something had changed in the herd. I returned to the same vantage point before sunrise, parked and silent, with my binoculars raised and notebook in hand. The buffalo had moved only a few kilometers from the site of the ambush. They'd taken shelter in a patch of mopane woodland, where the shade and dense brush offered some reprieve from both sun and predator. The cow who had defended the calf stood apart from the herd, just slightly, near a termite mound. She was upright, alert, but there was no doubt the encounter had taken its toll. Her right flank bore a gash, red and raw but not deep enough to be mortal. Buffalo are resilient, their skin thick and muscles hardened by a life of vigilance. But wounds are not just physical in the wild, they draw attention. And attention was beginning to shift. Among the bulls, especially the older ones, there was a stir of agitation. They gathered in tight circles, snorting, pawing at the earth. Cape Buffalo society doesn't operate with a rigid hierarchy, but dominance is understood and challenged through subtle pressure. A wounded animal, even one that has shown bravery, can become a liability. But here's what was extraordinary: none of the other cows or younger bulls distanced themselves from her. On the contrary, when she moved, several followed. The calf she'd rescued the night before trailed her constantly now, its mother walking close but strangely deferential, a change in body language that did not go unnoticed. I'd seen injuries in the wild become death sentences. A limping zebra gets left behind. An aging impala bull is pushed from the herd. But this buffalo, she was not being cast out. She was being watched, closely, and not with disdain, but with something I can only describe as deference. It was as if her act had shifted the herd's center of gravity. Later that morning, I spoke over the radio with Cabo, a ranger from a neighboring outpost who'd been tracking the same pride of lions for weeks. He confirmed they'd suffered injuries, 2 lions limping, and the older male absent since the night before. He also confirmed something more chilling: the pride wasn't done. They'd been spotted that morning on a ridge nearby, watching. The lions weren't giving up. What followed in the next 3 days was something I hesitate to describe as anything other than strategic. The buffalo herd, traditionally nomadic in their grazing habits, changed their behavior. They began moving in tighter formation. The calves were more centrally protected. The bulls took up more defensive positions on the flanks. But most notable of all, she was at the head. The wounded cow. The same buffalo who had charged 6 lions was now leading the herd's movements. It defied the usual patterns I'd come to expect. She wasn't the largest, the oldest, or even the healthiest at that point. But the herd followed her. Not in the sense of a leader issuing commands. Buffalo don't function like that. But in positioning, in spacing, in orientation. Herds are democratic in their own way. And the herd had seen what she'd done. On the second evening, the lions tested the herd again. This time it was a different approach, more cautious. I watched from a slightly raised spot, using the thick bush as cover. The sun had dipped low, casting that same honey-colored light over the landscape. The buffalo were feeding, slowly grazing a belt of golden grass near a dried-up streambed. The lions came from the east, 3 lionesses moving low and silent, using wind and terrain expertly. It was a textbook setup. Except this time, the buffalo were ready. As the lions began their slow advance, the herd shifted without warning. A wall of muscle and horns turned toward the sound, toward the breeze carrying the scent of danger. And standing again at the front was her. The cow, scars still open, limping slightly, was already moving. No panic, no stampede, just a wall forming in seconds, heads down, calves pressed to the center. The lions paused. There was a moment of uncertainty. They'd expected chaos. Instead, they faced an organized resistance. A younger lioness tried to bluff, she darted forward, snarling. The cow met her halfway. She didn't need to hit her this time. The message was clear. The lioness stopped, stared, and slowly backed away. The rest of the pride lingered a while longer, circling, testing. But nothing broke. The line held. It was the first time I'd seen lions abandon a planned attack on buffalo without even making physical contact. That night, I stayed in camp, still within the boundaries of the reserve, recording notes by lantern light. My colleagues came to visit. Word was spreading among the rangers. We shared stories, compared notes. It wasn't just my observation. The other herds nearby, when crossing paths with this one, showed odd behavioral signs. They differed in grazing patterns. They avoided confrontation. One ranger, Thato, who had grown up near the delta, said something that stuck with me. "She's not just brave," he said, pouring tea into a tin mug. "She carries something now, something bigger than her." He meant authority. On the third day, I witnessed something even more remarkable. The herd came to a wide, exposed pan to drink, dangerous terrain for any buffalo. I'd seen previous herds hesitate, scan, delay. But this herd moved quickly, drank, and moved on with mechanical precision. The cow, still limping, though a bit less, paused halfway across the clearing and turned. A small group of lions, the same pride, were visible on the ridge. She looked at them, and for several long minutes, nothing moved. It wasn't a challenge. It was something else, a recognition, perhaps. A line drawn. I won't claim the lions understood respect, but they understood danger. And for the second time, they backed down. That evening, as the herd vanished into the trees, I saw the calf she'd saved bump against her side, as if seeking comfort. The cow turned her head slightly, gave a slow, almost imperceptible nod, then continued walking. In the wild, no ceremony marks heroism. No medals are pinned, no stories told aloud. But among the animals, memory is kept in movement, in behavior, in instinct. And among this herd, the memory of what she'd done had not only been kept, it had become a guidepost. The dry season in Botswana sharpens everything. The air becomes thinner, the grass brittle, and the animals leaner. Waterholes shrink into muddy hollows, and the pressure between predator and prey turns from rhythm to reckoning. It had been 6 days since the ambush that began it all, and the lions had gone silent. For days they disappeared from view, no fresh tracks near the riverbeds, no calls in the distance. But anyone who knows lions knows they don't give up easily. Not when hunger becomes a second heartbeat. The pride had failed twice, and that only made them more dangerous. I stayed close to the herd, documenting everything. By now, I knew each major bull by his gait and scars, each calf by their wobble and voice. But my eyes, like everyone's, were always on her, the cow who had stood her ground that first night. Her wound had begun to scab over, the swelling reduced. Still, she moved stiffly in the mornings. Yet she remained in the lead. Not through aggression or dominance, but through presence. When she paused, the herd paused. When she stepped forward, others followed. She was the axis. On the 7th night, the lions came back. It began with a sound, low, almost imperceptible. I was camped a few hundred meters away, deep in a thicket. Around midnight, I woke to the unmistakable crack of dry twigs breaking under padded paws. Then came the coughs, short, barking grunts that lions make when gathering. It was a full pride. 9 of them this time. The entire force. This was no scouting effort. This was a coordinated assault. The buffalo were bedded down in a dense grove of camelthorn trees. A good defensive position, but not perfect. Too many escape routes, too much undergrowth. The calves were bunched toward the center, adults forming a rough semicircle around them. The matriarch stood again near the edge, eyes glowing faintly in the starlight. Then they came. From the east and south at once, lionesses first, moving quickly to scatter the flanks. A young male charged from the rear, roaring, trying to splinter the formation. The herd erupted in a wave of movement, bodies pushing inward, calves bawling. A few bulls turned to fight, horns lowered, clashing with two lionesses near the rear. Dust filled the air, and in the center of it all, she moved. Not away, not to safety, but straight into the teeth of the attack. A lioness had broken through, closer this time, dangerously near the youngest calves. The cow intercepted her with terrifying precision. She didn't roar, didn't bluff. She simply hit. The sound was like stone on stone. The lioness crumpled, stunned, then scrambled to her feet and retreated. Two more lions circled wide, trying to flank. The matriarch turned with shocking speed, lashing out again, keeping them off balance. And then, she made a decision I'll never forget. Instead of holding ground, she charged. Not toward the nearest lion, but through them. She broke formation, drawing 3 of the predators with her, away from the herd, down into a small depression filled with thick grass. It was suicide. Or it should have been. The lions gave chase instantly, sensing weakness. She stumbled once on the uneven terrain, her rear leg dragging slightly. They closed in. From my position, I couldn't see the strike, I only heard it. A deep grunt, a snarl, silence, then movement. The first to appear was the matriarch, emerging from the grass, her flanks heaving, blood streaming from her left shoulder. Behind her, one lion limped back the way it had come. Another stayed behind, unmoving. She didn't look back. By the time she returned to the herd, the fight had shifted. The bulls had formed a wall and were pressing forward. The lions, disoriented, leaderless in the moment, began to falter. Without momentum, without surprise, they lost initiative. Slowly, then suddenly, they withdrew. Defeated again. At sunrise, the full extent of the night's events became clear. 2 lions injured, 1 likely dead. Several bulls carried fresh scrapes and cuts, but none fatal. The calves, all of them, had survived. And her? She stood alone near the tree line, away from the others, her breathing labored, but steady. A gash along her side opened with each inhale, but she didn't fall. When the calf she'd saved a week earlier approached her, she lowered her head slightly, brushing it gently with her nose. Later that morning, something extraordinary happened. The herd began to move north, toward higher, safer ground. But they didn't move randomly or in confusion. They waited, every last one of them, until she took the first step. Then they followed. Not one of them moved before her. In the days that followed, she slowed. Her limp worsened. She began to lag at the rear of the herd instead of the front. But still, they responded to her, adjusting pace, standing guard when she paused to rest. By the end of the second week, she disappeared from my view. I feared the worst. For 3 days, the herd moved without her. I scouted, tracked, searched for signs. Then, on the 4th day, just after dawn, I spotted her. She had rejoined the herd. Weaker now, slower, but alive, and not alone. The calf was with her, as always. But more than that, a circle of young bulls flanked her on either side, not quite escorting her, but never leaving her unprotected. She had become more than a defender. She had become something older, deeper, an institution within the herd. Some say animals don't feel memory the way we do. That they don't understand sacrifice or leadership. That they only react. But I was there. I saw what happened. And I can tell you, that buffalo cow changed the herd. She taught them to anticipate danger, to stand, to resist, and to remember. She may not have had a name. But to every ranger who witnessed those days, she is remembered as the matriarch of Moremi, the buffalo who defied a pride of lions, not once, but 3 times, and lived. And somewhere in that vast stretch of Botswana wilderness, her blood still moves through the grass, still shapes the herd's path, still stands between the lions and the calves. She bore the weight of horns, and the weight of all who followed. And she never looked back.